And I'm speaking personally about my own personal story and experience with the vaccination. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization or institution. I also want to clarify that I am very pro-science and very pro-vaccine. So the intent today is not to deter anyone from vaccination. It's just to speak about my experience. And as a researcher, I want everybody to know that reactions are real. They're a natural part of science. They're not something we should avoid or deny or dismiss. I think we should encompass them into the body of scientific research so that they're studied and understood. I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit about what happened to me with each vaccination.
Absolutely. So, one, I am interested if the audience can hear about your day-to-day work. What is the kind of work that you do, and totally as much as you want to share. And then, what is your experience with the vaccine?
Right. So my work as a researcher, I have a background as a nurse. So I worked in various capacities as a nurse in hospitals on different floors, working in different in different medical areas such as telemetry, pediatrics. So I have a good broad base of foundation in nursing itself and doing the actual job of nursing. Later, I moved to become a nurse practitioner, and one of my passions has always been community health and infectious diseases. So as soon as I graduated, I gravitated to community health and started to work in HIV primary care. And then as I progressed in my career, I moved into research and clinical trials on various drugs related to HIV and hepatitis C. And then later through the pandemic, helped work on several therapeutics for COVID.
Shaun, tell me, when did you get your first dose? Was it a 2-dose vaccine? What happened?
It was a 2-dose mRNA platform, and my first dose was quite early because I'm in the medical profession, so I was in the front runners of people receiving vaccination. So my first dose was late December 2020, and I remember going there with like excitement to get vaccinated, get protection, reduce some of that fear and anxiety around COVID. And I had the first injection in my right deltoid. And I noticed almost immediately, not like around 15 minutes after into the injection, some strange sensations up and down my right arm. And I remember making a comment to the nurse. I said, "Oh, something feels a little strange." She's like, "Why don't we have you sit around a little longer, make sure everything is okay?" It was kind of like a cool, warm sensation up and down my arm. I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's just nothing. I felt fine. I didn't have any severe type, anaphylactic type reaction. It was mild. So I came home. Sensations were still there. I woke up the next day. I still had more sensations up and down my arm. It started to gravitate into my axilla area and my up scapular area. And then I remember probably day 3 or 4, I started to get eye irritation in my right eye and a little bit of cheek tingle. Very minimal, but the eye irritation was really strange. And I thought I had like something stuck in my eye. And I didn't immediately associate it with the vaccine because it seems so unusual. It's not like something you would think of as a typical reaction. So I remember seeking two consults with eye doctors because I kept insisting there was something wrong with my eye. They said, no. They stained it. Everything looked good. There was nothing in there, no infection. Then I think by day 6, I had a flushed ear, bright red. And that lasted about 3 days and then disappeared. I consulted with a neurologist because the paresthesias, the numbness, tingling stuff was still kind of going on. And I had this almost like a sensation like I was sweating in my armpit. But every time I would go to touch there, it was dry. They did an EMG. It was normal. Everything after around day 10, 11 just subsided. and I felt good. So, we didn't know much. We didn't understand much at that time. They were just, rolling out. So I thought, well, I should get the second dose. I had the second dose in mid-January or towards late January. And initially I had 3 days of just typical, I had it in the left deltoid this time. And I remember I had 3 days of just general, your usual injection site pain. But the pain kind of radiated up my neck and into my back. It was pretty significant pain, but I thought, oh, it's just from the injection. It'll go away. By day 4, I started to hear faint chimes sounds in my right ear. And the tingling returned. Some of the right eye irritation returned. So even though I got the injection on the left, the flare of things started on the right again.
Did you have any previous medical history, for example?
Yes, no, I should. So I'm a 51-year-old healthy male. I had no medical history significant. I have no chronic medical conditions, no autoimmune diseases. I've never had a vaccine reaction before. I've taken every vaccine known, all my boosters, no reactions, no history of hearing problems or tinnitus or neuropathy, no diabetes, nothing. I was not on any medications or supplements at the time. I don't drink and I don't smoke. And I don't do any other of the other substances. Yes. So fairly healthy and,
so
normal.
What's happening in these first days, weeks? Was there anyone, medical doctor, your own doctors, or folks who may be around you? Was there anyone who was able to provide any help, any guidance? How was your?
No, I think so. The first, I after the second dose, I reconsulted with neurology, and they were like, well, if it subsided last time, maybe it will subside this time. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And again, one of the problems is that these are relatively new. So I think the medical community we don't have the experience with them, right? So it's not like a measles, mumps, rubella shot we've been giving for 20 years. We know all of the ranges of reactions that have, in the years they've been given. So there were a lot of unknowns. So I think you can't blame anyone for not knowing, right, when something is new. And we're all just doing our best with what we know. And I think that was kind of the issue in the beginning. And the people who received vaccinations early on, you faced a medical community that was just kind of discovering how these are playing out in the larger populace.
Got it. So with the second dose, now you have more symptoms. Doctor said maybe just like the first one, these would go away.
Yeah.
What happened? Did they continue?
So they continued. The tinnitus kind of started to escalate to a severity that was profound. I'm talking like a 10 out of 10, where you're, literally on the bathroom floor and you're crying because you cannot believe what has happened to you. And you thought, this is not something you could live with. I'll be quite honest. It was pretty profound. So that set me on a desperate search as a nurse. Like I'm trained. I want answers right away. I want to know what's wrong. What should I do? So I did a lot of consults. I think I consulted with 4 ENTs, and at that time, a lot of them were like, could this be or could it not be? Is it coincidence? And I'm like, as a researcher, I'm 1000% sure this is not coincidence. Like the timing was just, too perfect. My medical history was not, non-existent. And so temporally it was just you could not deny the association in my mind. And given all the other thing that really sealed it was that the second dose in the other arm spiked paresthesias that I experienced on the first dose in the right arm. So to deny causality there, it's a little tricky.
And
My opinion.
So the second dose was in the other arm, and the
Yes.
other arm experienced the same.
No. So the first dose was in the right,
Yeah.
where I had the paresthesia. Second dose in the left, but flared the paresthesias initially on the right, and the tinnitus on the right.
Wow. So very
So
interesting.
seems like something was primed somewhere, and then the second dose, let it loose. So
Yeah.
again, suspect my suspicion, of what I can't say what happened on a cellular level. We just don't know. I wish we did, but
Yeah.
we're not there yet.
So then, trying to solve this, did you start taking some medicine, some protocols?
So my initial instinct was steroids. They're always the go-to when you want to tamp down some kind of immune or inflammatory response. But a lot of people were reluctant to use them because they were afraid it would also alter your immune response.
Right. Correct.
So I was kind of delayed in that. And I look back in hindsight, and I think there is some good research data now that shows in this kind of vaccine induced tinnitus, or I should say suspected for, nothing is proven. But there is some research that shows that some people who've had vaccine induced tinnitus respond well if treated early with a higher dose of steroid. So the neurologist I'm seeing now, well, let me just step back if I could and just clarify what happened further.
Please.
So by the end of January, the symptomatology became so severe that I developed like wild swings in blood pressure and tachycardia and abdominal pain. And I actually ended up in the emergency department in Pennsylvania, where my family is living. And I even said to the ER doc, I'm like, look, I'm a nurse practitioner. I work in research. I suspect I'm having a reaction. I was having the tinnitus really bad, the tachycardia, and my blood pressure was like 180 over 120. I had a bad headache, stomach pain. He was suspicious of it. He's like, we haven't seen this type of reaction before. They ran me through a CAT scan, found some mesenteric inflammation, said, oh, you probably have a viral syndrome, and sent me home with ibuprofen. I was not happy, but that's what happened at that time. And obviously the ibuprofen did nothing for me. Everyone was kind of fumbling around. And I think that was just the nature of being in the middle of a pandemic, right? We have to be realistic. We're in a crisis. We're trying to end that crisis. We're rolling out what we think is an important tool to end that crisis. And I think there's, you probably can never get it right, but I think what was missing was some education, or at least a support system in place where at least ER doctors could call in to some kind of center, either with the manufacturers or with, a government body and consult on what they're seeing, right? I think that wasn't and still isn't in place really. So people are still fumbling with like how to deal with reactions.
And on this point, I actually made a comment a few days ago. There was a Cool Beans question, and I was saying, in theory, vaccine companies, all of them, and FDA, CDC, are healthcare leadership organizations. They should have come together and said, here is a pool, here is a fund. I mean, there is a lot of money going into vaccines and their purchases and their building. And
Right.
we are paying, the taxpayers are paying eventually.
Right.
So if a pool can be made, and from that pool, studies and help and educational material and consultations could be given, I think there
Right.
is an important need for that instead of individuals trying to figure it out on their own.
I
What do you?
I would I agree. I think that would have been prudent and a wise, especially when you're rolling out something, a new platform for a vaccine, and there are a lot of unknowns in the general population. What we knew was from the clinic. What we know is from the clinical trials, right? But that when you put something out in the general population, like with any drug, anything can happen, right? And the goal is not to deter people or to make people fearful. I mean, somebody could take Tylenol and get a reaction, or aspirin and get a reaction, right? These are all things have reactions, but I think you to deny them or not address them is you know not scientific. You're just it's not realistic to say everything is 100% either
Agree.
way,
And
right? And then you leave a pool of people that are unlucky, like myself, and we may not be large numbers, but we exist, and to not help us is a disservice. I think a grave disservice, because I still struggle to understand what happened, and what course of treatment I should be seeking. Eventually, early on, I did do like one ENT did say, well, try a Medrol dose pack, but I was probably already past the 4th week part. And, that's a Medrol dose pack is not a very strong steroid, but I did do that. And it did tamp down the inflammation in my abdomen, and got that under control. Later, I did just my own search, just because I couldn't find the medical practitioner, because they don't exist, experienced in vaccine reactions. They're not on every street corner. But being fortunate, being in medicine, I tried to direct my own research and my own care for all of its successes and failures I've had over the past 11 months. But I started to set up groups online because I thought, oh, at that time I thought it was just me, and I wanted to find other people to see if more to find support and validation, to see if I'm not alone, that I'm just an oddity. And so I set up a tinnitus support group uh, online, and we have over 3,000 members now. And we do a lot of support and research activities in there, which is very important because tinnitus can be a very debilitating uh, illness for people. So support is everything. So through there, people have it. We share what we try, what works, doesn't work for different things, different theories. I went on different diets. I tried like low histamine, MCAS type diets, which I thought actually was helping my tinnitus in the early stages. So, but then it didn't really continue, right? So I really thought, oh, mast cell, and I did. I see somebody's raising a question about mast cell, but I did do a lot of lab work. I probably had a multi-million-dollar lab work that I pushed for in my quest, and I did do a lot of MCAS workup. And in my case, even the more specific urine studies, they always came out normal. But I did find anecdotal evidence that a low histamine kind of MCAS diet was helping. But unfortunately, things progressed, and I got beyond the tachycardia, which continued. That evolved into full blown autonomic dysfunction by March and April, where I had severe intractable insomnia. I had tachycardia episodes that would just come on and go for hours. Then it evolved to positional tachycardia. And I'm a straight bradycardic 50-55 person my whole life. Now suddenly I'm sitting 55 standing, going to 150, 160, feeling like I'm going to pass out, and I get nauseous. And and nothing was really working. I had, for the insomnia, I went on like several sleep medications, and I had never had problems with sleep before. But it was almost like my parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems would just not work. Like every time my body wanted to go into calm, it would just trigger me. And I would get like pour of adrenal dumps through my body that I could literally feel the chemical coursing through, burning my stomach and muscles. And this was by like June, July. So things kept going. And I kept seeing doctors and telling them, and cardiologists. And some people would be like, is this real? It's a lot of subjective stuff here. And, doctors generally don't deal well with subjective symptoms. Right? They like the objective, right? And if your lab's coming back normal, you're reporting subjective things, they tend to want to throw you in the basket of like anxiety or functional neuro disorders or things. But I knew, and that wasn't my case. And so I had to push for objective, and I did. And so I did, the autonomic testing, which showed I had positional tachycardia. And I did, eventually things progressed in August, where I woke up one night with full blown neuropathies all over, generalized my body, stinging in my hands and feet, burning sensations all over. And again, I went to the ED, I went to my doctors. They're like, we don't know. Let's check rheumatological, let's check more autoimmune, everything normal. I said, well, my neurologist by July was suspecting pseudomotor small fiber. She was the first one who was really engaged and curious. And she said, I think this is what's going on, what's causing it and driving it, we don't know. But I said, well, what's the definitive test for that? And she said, well, usually a skin biopsy. So I thought, oh, I have to do that. I need to know. So I arranged to have that done, and that did come back showing signs of small fiber neuropathy developing. So there I had some, by August, I had some objective data of like things that had gone wrong over the course, and what was driving this autonomic dysfunction, and now the new onset neuropathies that I'm dealing with.
So were they able to then start pinpointing that this is cytokine storms, or not storm, but continuous cytokine release from the
So
cells?
that we don't know, because like I have done cytokine panels, I had some elevations. I think nobody just really knows right now what is the primary driver. There's a lot of theories, right? I mean, I think some are known. We have our, these not the non-classical monocyte theories hanging out. There's some people who think it's, related to the T follicular helper cell and how that is used to create the immunity. There's some theories that it could be C4D deposition at the blood nerve barrier that was triggered, like the dysfunction was triggered. So we don't know. I've heard, MCAS components. I've heard glutamine storms. So there's a lot of unknowns. I get burn sensations down my chest. Feet feel sometimes like little toothbrushes, electric toothbrushes on low vibration. Little prickling sensations everywhere, burning.
Very sorry for that.
I
And you
feel nerve dysfunction in my hands when I stretch them, and I don't know why. That's the puzzle. I'm working. I research myself all day long. I read all the journals. I try to connect dots, but I'm not an immunologist. So we need help.